All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the AI Training Podcast. I have a very special guest today, and I am just thrilled to speak to Bailey Parnell. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is something I've been looking forward to. You are a thought leader, speaker, uh, just someone that I have looked up to for a while, and I'm thrilled to learn about digital well-being and all the things that you're passionate about.
Oh, I'm excited to talk about it. Anytime people will give me a stage, I won't shut up, even if it's for 3 minutes, because it
Well,
affects so many parts of our lives and people don't even realize it. So,
you're always welcome here. For those that I know you need no introduction, but to make things easy, why don't you give us a brief overview of who you are and what you do?
that's very kind of you to say, Mark, but I think I do need an introduction. And I'm not being self-deprecating there. I just know that not a lot of people are as obsessed with the digital well-being space as we are. So, my name is Bailey Parnell, and I own a company called Skills Camp, which is actually a soft skills development company. So, people skills like emotional intelligence or communication or a lot of intergenerational understanding recently, a lot of stress management. And that's kind of one area of my life: learning, design, development, delivery. But the other area of my life, which is why we're here, is that just over a decade ago, I started researching social media's impact on mental health. And you're probably, every time I say this, you're probably listening thinking, yep, because it's very innate and intuitive for people why this needed to be a thing that we looked into. So then that kind of started expanding over the last decade to be not just our mental health, but social media's impact on the things that also affect our mental health, like democracy and society and even education. I mean, you name it, really. It's affected pretty much all aspects of existence right now. And then that expanded to be what is now the field of digital well being, which really just wasn't a field 20 years ago because it just wasn't being studied, and it's now more integrated into our life. And fast forward to today, and this now includes a lot of generative AI and how it could and should be used in skills development and leadership in businesses. And that's what my current doctoral research is about.
Amazing. I was reading your bio, and this this YouTube video that maybe people may not know your name, but maybe they've seen this video as it's garnered millions and millions of views. Can you tell us a little bit about when that was and its
Mm.
impact on your career?
Oh, that's right. So I imagine you're talking about the TED Talk.
Yeah,
It's called "Is Social Media Hurting Your Mental Health?" And that actually came out in 2017 now, which is wild to me. And the premise of the talk is actually still largely the premise of how I talk about digital well-being and social media today. And so in a way, I'm proud of that because my thinking then still stands. And the thinking was that social media is it can be good or it can be bad. And if abstinence is not an option for you, like I would be laughed out of a classroom if I told everybody that they have to get off social media today. What my research looked into was, well, what about the people who are having a good time here? So if abstinence is not an option, then how do you get the benefits of social media with less risk? And in that talk, particularly, I actually feel my thinking and even the model has evolved since then, but it starts with what are some of the things that are going on in this space that create the what I would now call kind of environmental factors that affect your mental health? Like, what is a highlight reel? What even is social currency? What does harassment look like on these platforms? And then it talks a little bit about what are some of the impacts of that, like feeling anxiety, perhaps experiencing depression, like feeling FOMO, addiction. And then it ends with the 4 steps towards safe social, which is actually now the 5 steps towards safe social.
well, now you've got me hooked. What are these
Yeah.
for, and what was the additional one you added?
Sure. So the first four are still largely the same. Okay. Now, the premise that is still the core of that talk, though not explicitly stated that way in the talk, is that social media is a risky behavior, like sex or drugs or alcohol. And that's really how I teach about it, how I talk about it. And I actually think for listeners, it would be more useful to think of social media in your life in terms of how you think about it, how you parent about it, how you vote about it. Think about it more similarly to a category of drugs and alcohol versus how you think and parent and talk about just another communications medium like TV or radio. So, if that's the case, then if it is a risky behavior, because in psychology, a risky behavior is when you participate, you expose yourself to potential harm. And we know for sure that you expose yourself to many potential harms on social media, both physically, mentally, emotionally. Um, then the steps towards safe social are actually quite similar to that of the treatments of other risky behaviors. So,
Hmm.
step one is building awareness and understanding. Do we even know what's going on here? So, if you go watch that TED Talk, you are actually working on step one because you're starting to build language. You're starting to understand, if a teenager comes to you and says, I'm being harassed in my DMs, do you even know what a DM is? Or still, like it's a direct message for everyone listening. But do you know what that is? You can't really work on something if you don't even have the language to describe what's happening to you. And I think that that includes also an element of self-awareness here. So when you're building awareness, it includes yourself. Like, how can you build a feed that doesn't stress you out if you've never even really thought about the things that stress you out on social media? So in that stage is a lot of what's going on, what does it look like for me? Then step two is moderating your consumption. So after you've built the awareness, then what you actually do next to get the benefits of social media with less risk is different for everyone. For my husband, back when I first started this work, he wanted to unfollow every celebrity and influencer on social media. That wasn't working for him. It made him compare himself and or frustrated or all these sorts of things. So it was giving what would technically be called a negative affective experience, or what we might just call frustration and anger. And so for him, his step two would look like unfollowing those people. But for me, I was the exact opposite because I actually really liked to follow like a travel blogger, a style blogger, because, well, style doesn't come naturally to me. So I really need inspiration. And then I'll just like, okay, thank you for showing me how that works. I'm going to make that exact same outfit. And then maybe travel, I would say, oh, I'm going to put that on the vision board. I didn't even know I wanted to go there. So it was having the exact opposite reaction for me. So that was step two. Step three is the most important, if you ask me, and that is building the offline soft skills. This one, I feel we could talk about for the entire hour because what actually came out of my research was that the most important thing that led to someone having a good or bad experience online was how they felt about themselves offline at time of use. So that was like if they were feeling confident, that created basically how they would experience social media. As a kind of, I'll explain it in more detail later, but what it means for you is that step three is if you build resilience offline, if you build confidence, self-awareness, time management, all these things, I promise you it will translate to the online world. Step four is modeling good behavior and leading by example. And step five, which was added later, came because once I started talking about this around the world, naturally, the next question is, well, then this seems pretty important. Who's responsible for it? And I thought, you know what? You're right. I included self and I included what the self can do. And then I moved it out towards a long-term solution for yourself and I moved it out towards what you can do for others. But I forgot to include the system level part of this in the TED Talk. And so step five is holding responsible parties accountable. And just like any other risky behavior, if we're talking about alcohol, we would know that the government plays a role, parents play a role, educators play a role, and that really all parties play a role in having us be safe and healthy here. And the same will be true for generative AI as well.
Hmm. Very interesting. So how you show up when you use the tool has a big correlation between how you're going to experience it. Is that right?
That is right. So, what happened with my participants was, let's say they had a good day and they said, I went to the gym today, or it's actually almost a direct quote. I went to the gym, I'm feeling good about myself, or I finished that report, or I studied for that exam. Then I go online and I see a fitness model and I think hashtag goals. But then if I didn't do any of that and I slacked off today or I feel dusty was the quote, then I go online and I think I hate my life. And so this came up with a majority of my participants in some way, which was that when I was exploring, tell me about your experiences. What's good? What do you dislike about it? That was what came up was there wasn't one thing that was good or bad about it. The very same thing could be good or bad based on how they were feeling. And that's really, really important because we know that it's obvious that you and I are going to experience content differently. But what's even more important is that you are going to experience content differently in 2 different hours based on your offline life. So, though it might seem counterintuitive, perhaps the best piece of advice for enjoying social media is to actually build an offline life and an offline self that you're obsessed with. And
Mm.
that seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? Well, probably not to you.
Well, it's a very interesting observation, and I can say that, I love that expression, dusty. But when I've had my workout
Mhm.
and, I've done my rollerblading or what have you,
Yeah.
and then I engage with social media, it is a very different experience because you're feeling good about yourself, and then your perspective is different. So, like your point, seeing that someone who's in shape, it becomes motivating versus a reminder of what you've forgot to do or delayed.
That's right.
Um, when
And
it
that
comes
works in
to,
any realm.
sorry, what was that?
That's true in any realm. If you have worked towards social causes that really matter to you online and you feel like you're making a difference and you have volunteered, you have protested, you have done anything in the offline world, I'm actually telling you that those when you start seeing those posts in your news feed online, they will affect you less because you have felt that you have some self-efficacy, as in that you are able to create change here and you believe that you have the ability to do it. So because you've done that, even when you see news posts, you will interpret them differently.
You're clearly a very compassionate person and have a big heart. How has
Thanks, Mark.
how has the emergence of AI and people's use of ChatGPT, specifically, uh, this same paradigm of how you show up is the garbage in, garbage out. It's
Mm,
different than social media, but are people encouraged or discouraged with these tools that are supposed to save them time,
mhm.
but there's more output and a feeling of too many tools, maybe.
Yeah, I think digital overwhelm is a thing as well, and it's there's so many potential reasons for this. It's like, which direction do we go? Like, some people would say, I really love the quote, we have version 3 brains in a version 13 world.
Hmm.
And the tech has evolved faster than we have evolved as literal biological beings. So our brains still have biases. We still have, muscles and the ways of functioning that have been the way that the brain does things for a very long time. And so when we're starting to add all these new inputs, we might not necessarily be getting kind of the desired output that we would hope for because our internal processor is kind of the same. So I think digital overwhelm is only going to increase actually. And however, that means that one sentiment though is the feeling that there's too much, that there's like too many screens, too many tabs, too many things that I need to check, that kind of space of it. However, kind of similar to our past conversation, if you are more likely to feel overwhelmed in real life, you are more likely to be digitally overwhelmed. If you are more likely to be cluttered in real life, you are more likely to probably be somebody who has a million tabs open and is feeling stressed by that. So if I mean, again, I think starting offline is a really good start. But when it comes to the introduction of generative AI, I mean, this is the thing probably I'm most excited about right now. Or Apple Vision Pro, because I got one of those last week and
Oh, you got it?
wow. Wow. Okay, we have to talk about that next. But
Okay.
see, like, here's the thing. I am very excitable. I am excited about what this stuff can do, or I wouldn't even do my job in the first place. I know the benefits of this stuff. I like to think better than most. I'd be a total hypocrite. If I get the benefits of social media. We wouldn't even have met without social media. You wouldn't even have seen the TED Talk. I learn. I get connected to people. I get connected to family. I get inspired by those, Instagram models or whatever. And even ChatGPT, for example, I cannot tell you. Like, I thank ChatGPT. It's one of those things where I don't even remember my life before extremely quickly, and it has helped me become a better speaker, a better scholar, a better researcher, even a better friend and family member. I'm telling you, people, like my sisters who are not as technically intuitive as I am, or maybe connected, or for whatever reason, just not using it. I'm like, yes, absolutely. I will edit your resume in 3 seconds. And I'll just tell them, say, ChatGPT is going to do it, but I pay for it, right? So I've literally, I feel like, become better in all areas of my life because of this. But to your point, garbage in, garbage out, flowers in, flowers out, whatever you want to call it. I have a life that I feel I'm orienting towards good and towards service and towards this stuff, so that when these new tools come out, I already know what I need to use it for. I need to use it for, I like to be a good sister. I will like to use it for that. I like to be a good CEO. I would like to use it for that. I like to be an informed scholar. How can I use it for that? So there's clarity there on who I am and what I'm trying to achieve independent of my tools. And that way, every time a new tool comes in, that's why I get so excited, because yesterday I was using Apple Vision Pro for work for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, this is the future. Like my tabs were everywhere, or like, couple, I'm a medium tab kind of person, but they were all over.
Okay.
Like, this is amazing.
Speaking of tabs, do you ever use OneTab? You know that one?
No.
It is a Chrome extension
Hmm.
that just removes all of your tabs and puts them in one page so that it saves some mental bandwidth
Cool.
and also helps with processing speed. So,
Oh,
but
nice.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm probably, due to that tool, I'm probably more of a medium tab person. But there was a time where there was a bit of tab overwhelm. Um, I
So is
think we have to talk a little bit about the Apple Vision
Oh,
Pro
yeah.
that you got.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that.
So you got it a week ago. First opinion, experience. What did you unboxed it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that video.
No, I'm not. I'm not an unboxing kind of person.
I
I'm
know.
not a conspicuous consumption kind of person.
Okay.
And so like if you actually want to put the technical term about it, of course I've thought about it, Mark. This is my world. So the idea of conspicuous consumption is, are you consuming, one, ideally, and probably consuming luxury items, and then are you making it known on
Hmm.
purpose publicly? So while I do like new tools to help my life, I'm not out there like, hey everyone, I just got the new Apple Vision Pro. I'm telling you because I know you're going to be into the tech, right? And I am going to share this online at some point, because I actually think when I put it on, so you asked about my first reaction. My husband did it first while I was in class, and
Uh-huh.
then he like kind of set it up, and then I came out and I used it, and he had set up, little cutie, he had set up a panorama shot of a photo that I had taken in the past. And the panorama shot was, this is like a storybook now that I'm saying it out loud. I haven't said this yet, but it was a shot that it was at a family party. I want to say, geez, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. And my mom was at the party, and my mom passed away since then. So the panorama shot was like, oh my God, I wanted to start crying, because it was like, you were not even just because of my mom. I just mean because of actually the overwhelm of experiencing the tech for the first time. I promise you that was why I wanted to start crying. Just because I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything immediately. I was in the picture. I was life size with the people in my life. It was completely joyful. And then I tried the environments. I was in Yosemite. And then the gaming, like the way that it works with your eyes, the intuitive nature of it. In fact, like I even had over the weekend we had my sister-in-law come with her husband for a night, and we showed it to them, and they had the immediate reaction too was, oh, it was just like, I imagine that it is for me. Well, I'll just say now that I believe that paired with AI, even unpaired with AI, this is probably the biggest and most impressive tech innovation, actual physical innovation, probably since the iPhone. In that, I do think it will change probably every industry it touches. Now, right now, probably not, because it's inaccessible in price right now. And you still have to walk around with, I mean, like there's a big thing on your face, right? And people
Yeah.
are vain. So here's the thing. I don't know if it's going to all of a sudden be like everyone's walking around with it tomorrow. I'm not saying that, but I do think that they have released a Vision Pro first so that it could get out to developers. It could get out to people who can now add the apps, who can play with it a little, who can make it, work on it a little. And then my theory is they will release a non-pro version, a more simpler version that will be more accessible to general public, that will already have more apps on it and things like this because it's been out. And for example, it doesn't have Google apps on it yet, which for me is how I run my businesses. So that's why I won't be able to do all of my work there as seamlessly yet.
Hmm.
But you know what? For work, wow, it was like, and by the way, you can turn up and down immersion. So I know people are always a little bit worried of like, can I see the things in the background? Am I going to bump into a table? Like you actually, it's not like that. Even I had those concerns too. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So I had like my email in front of me, but it's imagine it being like huge size. I had over here my drive folder, a presentation that I was working on. So now suddenly I'm not limited to 13 inches waiting to get my bigger screen while my husband's, we have to share our tools. So there was that. There was, the other thing that it could immediately do was gaming. They had some test games on there where you are in the game, Ready Player One style. You are part of it. And it was fun, and tested it with my sister-in-law. They're laughing. This is entertainment. This would be a positive affective experience, right? And the other thing was, oh gosh, movies and cinema blow your mind. I mean, imagine feeling like you are literally at the cinema and it is that big in front of you. And I think, see, like okay, I'm getting very excited about this because it's only been 1 week, people. But trust me, I already know the ways that this can go wrong, and you can't be working in digital well-being without also thinking like, okay, well, how do we get these nice fun benefits without the risks, right? So that's kind of what I think about on the daily, actually.
Well, I love the enthusiasm and excitement. I can't wait to try it. I have not tried it myself yet. I've used the Oculus, the
Hmm.
gaming one, and that was fun, but there was no pass through. So very easy to, bump into things if you're not careful, and
Yeah.
the tech is certainly not nearly the same, but I'm excited to give it a try. Um, for that immersion experience of like watching movies, I imagine, husband and wife with their own kind of holding hands and like, like when you have multi devices with this, it'll be interesting how they connect and which screens you can share and participate with.
That's a really interesting insight because actually, the very first week we've had it, we only have one right now, but we were thinking, oh, it would be fun to get two eventually and I don't know, sync up. However, here's one thing that happened pretty much on day one, literally day one. Um, my we were like, okay, you try it. Okay, you try it. Okay, try this. Now I'm going to show you this. But then we realized you could cast the what you see to our screen.
Hmm.
So we kind of it was very intuitive, and I would like to think this is maybe a reflection of the relationship too, that we want to have shared experiences. So it was very intuitive for us to say, oh my gosh, cast what you're seeing. I want to see like what you're doing. Right. So then and then when our sister came over, we were like, oh, cast what we're doing, like cast what you're doing. So then it was like it was a very natural communal thing to say, like this should be shared. I don't know. It was, I guess that's funny that you bring that up, because in literally week one, it was like, no, you need to share what you're doing so we can all be in on the fun. That was a natural reaction for us.
Very cool. So you were sharing it just to your TV, is that right?
Yeah. Now, of course, it's very different when you're in the set. And that's what we're saying is what me and my husband are obsessed with is shared experiences. So, what I don't see us particularly doing in the future is, we have two different sets on and we're watching two different things. I don't think that will ever be a thing in our household unless it was like for work, I don't know, like that wouldn't be shared, right? So it would be like defeating the purpose. That would be solo time. And
Yeah.
but I could see us like watching the same thing. That would be very neat. And then just like laughing when you look over each other and you look like a bug, right? But I do think they'll also probably, as they release it, as it becomes more publicly available, I'm sure that the sizes will get smaller. I'm sure that everything will only head in this direction of more seamless to the human experience.
Yeah, to your point, I think you're right about them introducing it at a price point where it's accessible to developers and people that are going to make it better. And then, a basic Apple Vision comes out, making it, at a price point that's a little bit more affordable for most people. Um, when it comes to AI and Apple, Apple hasn't kind of like Apple's had Siri for a long time, which isn't quite AI, but it's got quite a
In a way, it
large
is.
it is, but
It's
it's
just
not,
not.
I wouldn't necessarily compare it to like a chat GPT like
Yeah,
capability yet.
it's right. It's not generative in the same way, for sure.
Right. So I see a kind of rollout of like a Syria or whatever they're going to call it, right?
Wait.
This with the Apple Vision. So
Yeah.
the hard thing I think from a mental health perspective is having people glued to this screen
Hmm.
where, gamers already spend
Hmm.
streamers they're doing they're on screens longer than they're sleeping.
Hmm.
um, how have some of the principles that some of the tools that you've developed over the years for social media
Hmm.
could be applied to these future scenarios that we're going to be faced with?
It's a great question. And that's exactly why my work has expanded beyond social media, because the principles prove to be largely the same. And so it's funny we're talking now because I recently changed over what my nonprofit used to be called hashtag Save Social. We recently rebranded and to the Center for Digital Wellbeing. And part of that was just because we have been doing it, actually not even a rebrand like here's what we're going to do. We've been talking about digital well-being. We've been talking about generative AI, going beyond social media, going beyond mental health. So it was more of an, I suppose, accurate time to accurately name it. But that's a good question because they are largely the same. I will say that generative AI is not in the exact same category as Apple Vision Pro. I would say Apple Vision Pro, like Gen AI is going to power everything, including Apple Vision Pro, including
Right.
your smartphone, including your garage, like whatever you want, literally. That, I mean, that one I love so much. We could talk about, I mean, I've dedicated my whole doctorate to it. So whatever you want to talk about, they're slightly different, but with Apple Vision Pro, you're just right. We're going to have to follow the same steps here. People, I promise you, in 1 year, 2 years, I'm going to be talking about how everyone needs glasses again. Because, one thing I will say I noticed was I didn't get the ocular inserts yet for people that have glasses. I am going to be getting those because I have to wear glasses to see things far away. Now, you would think to yourself, I have a thing on my eye. Um, I'm not looking far away, but in fact, they have figured out how to play with your eye so that you are looking far away. And your eye is changing from far distance to near distance. And I felt it in my own eyes, and I could see, and I was like, oh, okay. So when I came out, I was like, oh, it's a little bit blurry. So, point is, though, just like screens, just like we had those conversations, just like when you come out of an hour of social media, the conversations are probably going to be kind of similar. Like, let's figure out what's going on here. Make sure that you're moderating your consumption for you. If you're a gamer and you're getting true enjoyment out of this, that's not inherently worse to me than, enjoyment of an hour of reality television. But if it starts affecting your life and you are unhappy with your life, and why are you using, would be all questions that we would ask around social media as well. To escape is one thing, right? And usually, I always say the dark side of social media is the dark side of people. That came in the TED Talk. Now I say it about Gen AI. The dark side of Gen AI is the dark side of people. And I'll probably say it about about Apple Vision Pro too. When this is used for sick aims, and probably early, it'll probably very early be used for things like pornography and whatnot. Um, I will be saying that's the people. I can use this tool to reshape a world. What are you going to use it for? Like, do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's incredible how quickly things have changed even in the last year. Like we think about ChatGPT only being out for so long, and they've gone through a few different versions of it.
Yes,
Um,
that's right.
I,
Public release was just
I,
at the end of 22.
yeah. As you were talking, I had this flashback of being a little kid and sitting in front of the TV, and my parents telling me to like back up. You're sitting too close.
Yeah,
And fast forward,
I
we've
know.
got screens literally on our eyes.
I know.
I don't know what the research looks like, but that's a very close screen. How did your
Yeah.
eyes feel after using it for an hour?
Um, well, that's a good point, right? So that's why I was saying that there are going to be, even with our phones and whatnot, there has been physical consequences, like carpal tunnel, like, people's pinkies saying, oh my gosh, it hurts, like eye strain on small screens, like neck strain, tech neck. I mean, really, there's been literally many actually physical repercussions as a result of just that one innovation. And I do think that in terms of eyes, though I am not an ocular specialist, I would say everybody's going to be nearsighted soon. Both with the screens and like one screen in the day so that I can watch a bigger screen at night and play with my smallest screen beside me. Like, we're always on screens. And then with the Apple Vision Pro, I will say my eyes, I did have some strain after. However, I think it was because I didn't get the ocular inserts. So I would be interested in maybe testing that and then giving you a better like answer, because I would be
Sure.
someone that has glasses offline to see far. So I should have gotten those when we purchased them, but I
In our
didn't.
in our next chat, we'll do a follow-up after you've had that experience.
Yeah, I will say though that there were some people who were saying that as a unit, it's like was causing them some neck strain already, even after wearing it for a little bit. They now have two different kinds of straps. Ones that goes around the back, and then there's one that goes around the head and back. That to me is clearly like if you're going to be wearing this for a little bit longer, then you'd want the support of the head on your neck. And the other thing was, though, this is so early. Like, this is just literally so early that once you figure all this stuff out, it will ideally be solved, whether by Apple or by a third party. Just the same way that now have a case that allows me to, put my fingers through the back and release some strain. So it'll happen. It'll happen.
Yeah, the devices are only going to get smaller, and we're going to look at the current Apple Vision Pro as a
Huge.
relic in a very short period of time. Um, what are some of the common misconceptions people have about digital well-being?
I think, and I reflected this in the new branding, which people might see if they go look up eventually the Center for Digital Wellbeing. The logo for this actually has two brackets around digital. And the reason for it is because it really is just the center for well-being. And digital is plays a part in every part of your life now. So I would say probably one of the more common misconceptions is that this is exclusive to the digital realm. In fact, as you know, this affects your work. I ask audiences all the time because one of my main keynotes right now is called Digital Culture is Workplace Culture. And I say to them, and overwhelmingly, this is enough rooms now where I can just tell you anecdotally, if I was conducting it as official research, we would have over 1,000 people and multiple rooms, multiple industries where I say, Are you hybrid? What's the hybrid setup of this room? Over 90% are either hybrid or remote. And like maybe 1-2% in every room has said full in office. Okay, great. Even let's say you are hybrid, some people have to go into the office. Great. I also ask them, how much time do your people spend in digital spaces? For example, email, Drive, Slack, chats, like this kind of stuff. I'm consistently above 70%. Consistently, the majority is above 70%. So I say, okay, well, most of your people, most of your time, most of your people, most of the time are in digital spaces. Therefore, digital culture is your workplace culture. Now just extend this line of thinking to entertainment. How much of your entertainment is through a digital experience, digitally mediated entertainment? Okay. Oh, 90% of it. Okay. 90% of your entertainment, 90% of your work are in digital spaces. Now let's talk to me about social communication. Like whatever part of life it is, all of life is digitally mediated now. So it's just well-being. That's the biggest misconception is this should not be an after effect. How like an afterthought about how you deal with social media. Do you use social media for an hour a day? Okay. 1/24th of your life. Let's think about that, right? Like even if it's just 1 hour per day over time, this is not like, oh, I'll just worry about my social media later. This is like, this informs who you are as a person. You can't figure out why you're frustrated and you're stressed and the world seems like it's falling apart. Probably this plays a role. So I would say that would be my main thing that I want people to realize is that the, even though I say digital well-being because it makes sense to people, I actually just mean well-being.
Makes sense. As the worlds consistently begin to blend more and more, that
Mhm.
is probably truer now than it's ever been.
Yeah, no one says like my digital Netflix. Or like it's just how you watch things now or something like that. So that's not to say though that the digital aspects of it haven't had consequences. I focus a lot on I'd say the things that I talk most about are social media and generative AI now. Well, apparently Apple Vision Pro now too, but like yeah.
Uh, in you have quite a storied career. What are you most proud of?
Mhm. Okay. I think I'm in a time in my life where I was going through at the end of last year just or at the end of 23 being like, okay, you've achieved some of the goals that like you've achieved the goals that young Bailey set out for yourself. I just think I didn't see far enough and things revealed themselves to me along the way. Like I didn't think that I wanted to do a master's. I didn't even know. No one in my family even graduated high school. So I was like, I don't know. And then my doctorate, that was never in the plan either. The plan unfolded as it went. These days I've been thinking like what do you want to do in the long term and what are you most proud of, that kind of stuff. I would say that the work has been more global than I ever thought it would be. And even though I'm from Canada and I saw your Tim Hortons mug, which we need to
Yeah,
talk about,
quick plug.
and I live in New York City, I actually get the privilege now of traveling around the world over the last decade. I mean, all over many continents to talk to people about this stuff. And what I have found is when you talk about something like other social issues, like say for example, I'm talking about gender issues, they change radically around the world. I mean, I don't know if they should, however, they do. And how they're talked about, how they're culturally related to, how they're politically related to. I mean, it's different everywhere.
Mhm.
But when I go and I think about social media or tech or Gen AI, and I go to, I mean, everywhere. I've been, you name it. Like, you want to go to UK, you want to go to talk Brazil, you want to go Saudi, you want to go China, you want to go Egypt, you want to go all these places. The conversations are literally exactly the same. Exactly the same. The impact it's having on youth, exactly the same. I've been to a World Youth Forum in 3 countries. Exactly the same. The same because, well, unsurprisingly, the shift has happened the same for everyone. The companies are largely the same everywhere. And so I have I have found it to be a true pleasure and also a moment of pride that I've been able to help people outside of my own sphere in my own nation even. Um, yeah, I hope to do more of that.
That's great. Um, what would you say your biggest challenge is as a leader?
Oh, it's always the greatest challenge is the greatest reward, isn't it? Always, people always tell me that their greatest challenge is people, but I own a people development company. So I'm like, yeah, people are complicated. But but we also bring the greatest joys to the company too. So challenges, right now, gosh, it's so basic. I think it's just time for me. Like I really do want to do it all. And because weirdly, like because it's all purpose driven, it's all mission driven. I'm like, how do you drop something? Like everything feels important. So I'm probably my challenge right now is like finding the time to do it all and a doctorate and just like I suppose prioritizing in things that are all truly like socially driven and important. So how did you get that Tim Hortons mug?
It came from Toronto.
Okay, perfect. I just brought it back
Yeah,
down to the US for some inspiration.
yeah, I'm still hanging on to it. Unfortunately, it's not Tim Hortons coffee in it, but it's okay.
Well,
Uh,
bless him, but that might be fortunately.
yeah,
It's not very good.
no, it's not definitely not the best. I was looking at your bio, and years ago, you started your career on some TV, Rogers TV, as
That's
well
right.
as some other networks. How has that experience translated into, some of the media stuff you do now and your other work?
Well, that is so fun that you brought up local television because good old local news was my start. And I used to, at the very beginning of it, I would volunteer doing camera work. So I used to be the person behind the big TV camera at local sports games. So, like, it was called OHL, Ontario Hockey League.
Yeah,
So, kind of like, the state version of the hockey league. And we'd have to show up 5 hours early and we'd have to set up all the cameras and they were so heavy. And I would just like follow around the sports game. But then that led to doing on air local news stuff. So imagine like going out to the events, talking to people, Chinese New Year here, a STEM festival there, just that kind of stuff. And my undergrad was in media production. So the first little bit of my career was in more the TV space, like TV non scripted, so news. So glad you asked that question because when there was a time in my life where I thought that my life was going I was kind of nervous. I was worried. And I thought, well, really love this world of social media. It's been opening up opportunities. I'm really drawn to this idea of new. Like, I like the future, clearly. And I've even learned that about myself, over the last decade is I am somebody who is drawn to designing the future. And that actually is an important distinction because everyone, I think everyone likes to think that, but then if you know that about yourself, then how you orient your scholarship, how you design a study would be naturally future facing. You wouldn't say like, I want to study something that's happened unless it was for the reason to advance actions in the future, right? So there's, it also orients how I choose my businesses, and stuff like that. So let's see. I thought that my world was going, I was like, oh my gosh, social media is so different than TV. What am I going to do? But then, so I thought that the perfect combination would be doing social marketing for TV shows. So I did that for a while as well. And I worked with Bell Media, which and their music and entertainment brands, which is Much Music, MTV, M3, and those networks, and quickly learned that was not what I wanted to do. So fast forward, figured out what I loved more, figured out I loved education, started my company, and then fast forward again to the pandemic, and suddenly all in-person programming is shut down. So my main business, Skills Camp, went from 100 to 0 in the span of a week because we were predominantly in-person learning before that. Even though I always offered online learning and like even live online learning, it just was not asked for as much. And then the pandemic hits, and I lucked out because suddenly this whole first half of my career, where I did media production, which was talking to a camera with
right.
nobody else around you, and even things I took for granted in basic media production are things like lighting, framing, cameras, how to make it work together, how to use software for media production, all all that stuff was now, even green screens, which we were talking about earlier. I have one right back here. How to use that. Um, I already knew all this, and this is very basic in media production. So I was fortunately quickly able to transfer my business over to be more online learning, and that has actually stayed the majority ever since. So in a way, it was meant to be and meant to happen. And of course, being in media and understanding how to tell a story, what makes a story, has no doubt helped my career as a speaker and as someone who can make these ideas make sense to people. That will is I could say is probably the best skill that has come from that, which is taking very complex things and being able to make them make sense to people in very simple ways.
Amazing. I love that, and I love that you have that history in local uh, Toronto media.
Yeah. Well, even smaller because when I first started, I lived outside of Toronto in Peel region. So Brampton, Mississauga would be like a well, I think they're actually both over 1 million people, so they're probably they're big cities now, but just not the biggest one.
And they've certainly changed a lot, and as has the world. Um, let's. I appreciate we're approaching time. We've still got a bit of time there.
For sure.
Um, what practical tools can you leave people with to encourage a healthier digital well-being for themselves and the people that are important to them?
Gosh, we could go on for a very long time. I would say rewind to those 5 steps,
Hmm.
and the biggest thing is you working on your offline self. I know it seems counterintuitive when we talk about AI and Vision Pro and social media, but I will reiterate again from earlier in our conversation. If you are working hard on building something that you love, you're working on being the best at your job that you can be, and that motivates you. Or maybe it's not that, maybe it's motivated towards your family or being a good friend, or you have a hobby of rock climbing, or you have social causes you're invested in. I promise, if you're doing this and you're working at that like it is the goal, all of this digital experience will be easier. I can't emphasize this enough. It seems counterintuitive, but if you have an offline hobby, suddenly your digital experiences, your offline hobby is sewing. Well, now your digital experiences are full of people sewing and selling it, or look what I did, or DIY. And then you're like, wow, this is like a better experience because you found things that you're passionate about. Cannot be understated as a digital strategy. But then if you want to actually get into like digital and change some things, start even with maybe just your own content audit. Just do a mindful scroll. Go through your feeds of like even just 5 posts. Try 5. If you can get through 5, you might be better than most people. On purpose, pay attention to who posted it. Do I even follow them? Do I even like them? Do I like this post? Should I restrict them? Should I block them? Like whatever. What would I love to see more in my feed? And I've started to see mostly younger generations talk to the algorithm as a joke, like in their posts. They'll say, algorithm, please send me writers and photographers and whatnot. And basically, it's kind of a joke, but it's also kind of true. They're trying to post for this stuff so that they're hoping that the algorithm, which will pick up on it and return that to them. So also there's an aspect of not just what you don't like, but what would you love? And can you craft your digital experience to meet that for you? What's important to you? What are your values? Is your value family time? Can this tool support family time? Okay, if it can, great. Let's use it sometimes. If it can't, then that's not for family time. Family time needs to stay family time. Okay?
That's great. I've got a wonderful story. I was talking to my cousin.
Okay.
He has son, and they do a bedtime thing with ChatGPT where the son will create a bedtime story,
Oh,
and
neat.
he'll either read it to him or have one of the AI voices read the story. But it's basically a custom story from a little kid, and
It's
I was like,
wow. I love
you
that.
are winning at parenting, and I think that is a very unique application that is accessible for a lot of people.
That
So
is so
uh,
good.
I every time I have a chance, I'd love to share that story and Give my cousin Craig full credit for that. Um, I wanted to ask you, in speaking about mental health, I speak to a lot of high performers. Is meditation a practice of yours, or how has that,
Mhm.
I'm sure it comes up during conversations around, what you do with yourself offline and how do you prepare yourself for either the day or before you get on to the intentionality you bring to media.
I bring extreme intentionality to everything that I do, I would say. And so, therefore, there is a level of mindfulness and meditation, I suppose, presupposed in that. Um, we teach mindfulness at Skills Camp, and it is also one of the best things you can do for digital well-being. So I'm super familiar with that world. I find where people get tripped up on the Skills Camp side of my life, so just everyday people trying to implement this practice, is they go straight to, like, let me sit for an hour and meditate, or let me sit even for 10 minutes and meditate. And then they're like, oh, now I'm pissed. Oh, now I'm thinking about something. Now I'm thinking about not thinking. So now I'm failing at meditation and this is annoying and I'm not going to do it. And so we say, we do mindfulness with people at work, and we say, and I'm sure you do too, the practice of it is integrating it into things maybe that you do every day in life. Like every time you brush your teeth, just think about brushing your teeth, or every time you eat a meal, think about what it tastes like, feels like, smells like, and and looks like, all that jazz. That would be building the muscle of it. And then meditation goes in many directions because it's also inherently a spiritual practice for some people too, right? Praying is a version of meditation, if you ask me. So whether you're if you want to call it, giving gratitude, or you want to call it praying, like same thing, basically. And both of them are a form of meditation and mindfulness, which is, let me focus in on my life, what I want to happen, what has happened, and be in this moment. So people might not think that this is a practice you could build in other ways. For me, I am, again, mindful in everything I do, and that can have, weirdly, I've learned the consequences of that too. Like, I am here with you right now. I don't even know what's going on in the rest of my life right now. What that also means, though, is that sometimes my messages go unanswered for a week because I'm in the thing that I'm doing. So
Right.
it's like, I say to my friends, like, if we plan a time to hang out, I will be so in that time. And I will be all there in that time, and there will be no screens. But if you're messaging me and I'm in that time with someone else, that's probably not going to hear from you. Like,
I love
that's
that.
consequences, I guess.
Be where you are.
Mhm.
So my company is called Grateful AI,
Mm,
and we
nice.
believe in bringing gratitude to the practice of using technology as
Love
a
it.
great foundation. And something that you said before about whether it was using your uh, Apple Vision Pro or ChatGPT, I feel that you often are very appreciative of the tools. So I love that.
Very much so. They've helped make me better in every way.
Well, this has been so much fun. I think we're just about at time. If you
Mm.
want to see more episodes like this one, you can check out openaitraining.com. And where can people connect with you?
I am at Bailey Parnell on everything, and hopefully the good side of social media, or baileyparnell.com.
Well, thank you so much for this. I hope everyone listening got a ton of value from our conversation, and I look forward to doing this again sometime.
Thank you for having me again.
Thanks, Bailey. So let me just pause this so we
Fun.
get that
Thanks.
recording in there.